Hello! Read it here. Today we're going to read a story from our /entitled parents. Now, for our first story. EM brings her 4 kids to an adult-only wedding. I attended an adult-only wedding for a coworker a few days ago. The actual ceremony was in a very small church, so it was mostly family and close friends, but the reception was for roughly 250 people. The reception was at a very elegant hotel ballroom. Not child-friendly in any way. Crystal stemware, expensive linens on the table, etc. About half an hour into the reception, a commotion started that made everyone stare. EM is arguing with the wedding planner loudly. Me being the nosy broad that I am inched closer to hear. Turns out EM brought her 4 young children to the reception, even though the invitations clearly stated adults only. The EM insisted that her kids, I'm guessing at ages, but the oldest one looked 8-ish and the youngest was under a year old, were super well behaved, so it was fine. Now, keep in mind this was around 7:30 p.m. WP was having none of it. She insisted that children were not allowed and she had to leave. In a last-ditch effort to get admitted, EM shouted at the bride. The bride went over and listened to her for a moment and then said in a syrupy, sweet voice, "Of course you can come in, EM, but your children cannot." She turned on her heel and went back to her new husband. EM flipped a nut, yelling about how she was invited, couldn't find a babysitter, etc. 3 of the groomsmen escorted her and her kids to the door. Let's hear from the comment section. Comment 1. Bride gives no fucks about EM, and I love it. Comment 2. When my brother and I were younger, maybe 12 and 10, respectively, my cousin had a no-kids wedding. When my parents showed up without us, all of that side of the family had children running about, and the bride and groom expressed their sorrow that we, Big Bro and I, had not come. My parents had listened to their instructions and kept us home out of respect. I'll never understand that logic, but whatever. Comment 3. I had a similar experience. My son was about a year old when my out-of-state first cousin got married. My cousin wanted an adults-only wedding reception. She indicated she would locate a babysitter for us. We said we would pay for the sitter. And although we had never left our son with a stranger, we agreed. When we arrived for the wedding, my cousin said she couldn't find a sitter, so my wife would have to watch our son during the reception. Well, I wasn't going to make a stink. This is my cousin's day, and we would honor her request about no kids. But I wasn't going to abandon my wife either. That wasn't fair to her. So we drove by the reception during the middle of it so I could briefly run in and see my extended family. Again, we lived out of state and I didn't get to see them often. Lo and behold, there were more than a few kids there, like 10 or 12, of various ages. I don't know if those guests ignored the no kids request or were exempted from it. But what really soured me on my cousin, who I was quite close with and considered like a sister, saw me, she commented, "Oh, you reconsidered coming without your wife?" I replied, "No, they're in the car. I just wanted to say hello to everyone, since I don't get to see them often." "Okay," she replied and wandered off. She could have easily said, "Since there are other kids here, you might as well invite them in." Nope, they weren't invited. Again, this was her day, so I wasn't going to make a scene, but I haven't been close with her since. Just as telling, she hasn't cared. Comment 4. We also had a no-children wedding. Well, my husband's family decided that they were going to do whatever they wanted. They brought the whole pack of about 7 kids. To try get them out of the way, we put them in one of the rooms for overnight guests. They trashed the room while the nanny slept, and their parents later brought them into the reception anyway, where they proceeded to steal guests' cake and break several items. We were never repaid the cleanup bill and never offered an apology. They wonder why I refused to hang out with them. One of the parents also spiked my drink with alcohol at a separate event because it would be funny. I am allergic to alcohol. Now, for our second story. Entitled Mother calls the police on me for stealing her daughter, who is my girlfriend, and an adult. Sorry this is so long, but I hope those of you who read it will enjoy it. Background. This happened about 5 years ago. My fiancé and I have been together 7 years this month. We're hoping to get married this year, but might postpone due to the circumstances. We were reminiscing some old stories yesterday, when this one came up, and she suggested I share it. She was my girlfriend at the time, and at the time I was fully aware that her mom was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. But this was the pinnacle of her behavior. If you guys enjoy this story, I actually have a few more I shall share if you like. Sorry for the length, but I hope you guys enjoy it. FYI, there's a happy ending. Cast: EM, Entitled Mom, my future mother-in-law. Girlfriend: Ellie. PO, police officer. Obviously. Story: Ellie and I weren't living together at the time. She just stayed over from time to time when she could. I took her home after she had been staying with me a couple days and was heading to work. But shortly after, just before getting to work, I get a phone call from her and I can tell she is in tears. Apparently when she got inside, EM immediately blew up on her about being gone for so long. Even though it was only 2 days and she told EM she was going to be gone and kept in contact with her while she was gone. But Ellie just sort of brushed it off and went to her room. EM's house was pretty much your stereotypical crazy cat lady house. House badly decaying, cats all over the place, go to the bathroom in random places and whatnot. And when Ellie gets to her room, she realizes while she was gone, the cats pissed and shit all over a pile of her clean clothes. But whatever, Ellie decided to just bag them up and she would wash them next time she came to my place. Her mom didn't have a functioning washer at the time, and apparently that really set EM off. EM apparently thought Ellie was bagging her clothes because she was planning to go back to my place that night, stay another few days. So she stomped into her room, grabbed the bag, ripped it open, and flung the clothes all over the room along with the cat shit and piss while screaming at Ellie that she's not going anywhere. That's when Ellie ran outside and called me. She was so upset and didn't know what to do. Her mom had been doing crazy stuff to Ellie since I'd been with her, but up until I just helped her, however, I could while not getting involved and not saying a word to her mom. I told her to go ahead and get the things she needs, and I'll take her to my place. She said she would love that. I told my work I was going to be late due to an emergency, and turn around and go pick her up. When I pulled back up to the house, Ellie was in the driveway crying. I went and hugged her, told her it was going to be okay, and that she could stay with me as long as she wanted. So she went back inside to get her things. As I was standing outside waiting, I heard the door open again and went to help Ellie with her things. It's her mom. EM comes stomping out with her hair, crazy and frizzled, in an old nightgown. She beelines for me and gets right in my face. EM, with an extremely thick, high-pitched southern accent, my daughter, said I need to come out her and ask what you think of me. I knew that was a blatant lie, as Ellie would never instigate this. You got something to say? Huh? You think I'm trash, don't you, huh? That's what you think, isn't it? Again, up until now, I'd completely kept my mouth shut and was trying to maintain that. But this woman was up in my face, freaking out, and was tormenting the woman I loved. So I finally looked at her and broke my silence. Opie, why do you treat her like this? Gas, what do you mean? That's my daughter, and I worship the ground she walks on. Opie, oh really? So calling her a slut, bitch, cunt, and whore's worship. Yes, I've heard her say this with my own ears. Gasp, I would never say anything like that. Opie, getting rather irate, bullshit. I've heard you say it. Explosion, you get your fucking ass off my property. Okay, I almost never find myself in situations like this, so I'm not used to it. I say that because after she said this, I pretty much saw red. I'm not proud of it, but I just started shouting every curse word in the book I could possibly think of at the top of my lungs while she went back in the house. But thankfully, that only lasted a few seconds and I immediately calmed down. So finally Ellie comes back out with her stuff. We put in the car and I assume it's over. But Ellie turns to me and says, Ellie, I'm sorry, but we can't leave yet. Opie, why not? Ellie, Mom called the cops. I sort of had a feeling that would happen. No big deal. So we just sat and waited for the cop to arrive. After about 10 minutes or so, a cop car pulls up. Right when he does, EM comes out of the house and oh my god. Yes, she was doing exactly what you think. She instantly puts on the fragile, brittle old lady act. Hunched over, walking slowly the whole gig. And of course, when P.O. asks her what happened, she has to pitch her entire medical chart to the guy. Ellie will tell you this woman has been terminally ill for 12 years, LOL. So when she finally gets done trying to milk this poor guy for sympathy, She tells her version of what happened. EM, sir, he came onto my property and verbally attacked me. He's awful to me, sir, and I've never even done anything to him. He's turned my daughter against me and is trying to convince her to leave. At first, he seemed somewhat sympathetic to her, until he turns to Ellie. P.O., ma'am, this is your boyfriend? Ellie, yes, sir. P.O., okay, and how old are you? Ellie, sir, I'm 23. This was my favorite part because the officer looked up from his notepad with a look of, wait, what? Obviously, he was thinking Ellie was a minor or something based off of how EM was acting, but quickly realized just what he was dealing with. Eventually, he turns to me. P.O., okay, sir, please give me your version of what happened. I did so. Funny side note, at one point P.O. looks up at me and says, P.O., you look really familiar. Do I know you? It actually turned out the P.O. and I had gone to high school together. Once we recognized each other, we laughed and shook hands, and very briefly. This was hilarious because out of the corner of my eye, I see EM has a big scowl on her face as she sees me getting friendly with P.O. But anyway, P.O. puts his notepad away and turns to me. Just FYI, he says the following with this heavy tone of, I know that you are fully aware of this and don't believe you are in the wrong at all, but I have to say this as a formality. P.O., well, OP, she doesn't want you on the property, so be aware that if you come back here, you technically can be charged with trespassing. Do you understand this as I've explained it? OP, absolutely, sir. EM, but sir, I want to press charges. P.O., he didn't do anything illegal, ma'am. EM, but he verbally assaulted me. P.O., I understand that. And while that was ill-advised, he slightly turns to me and gives me a small gesture with his hand, and I nod in agreement. It's not something I could arrest him for. He agrees he will not come back on your property without your direct permission. Ing? Oog. Okay, fine, whatever. Ellie, come back inside. Ellie, what? No. EM, you heard P.O. OP is leaving and you're staying here. P.O. Whoa, ma'am, I didn't say that at all. M, but be you. P.O. Your daughter is not a child, ma'am. She is a full-grown adult. She has every right to go wherever she wants. EM, I'm her mother. She lives under my roof. I told her she needs to stay here, so she needs to stay. P.O. No, ma'am, that's not how it works. If she wants to go stay with her boyfriend, there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop her. EM starts the fake crocodile tears and stomps in the house in defeat. Ellie and I thanked the officer, got in the car, and left. We've been living together ever since. Happy ending. Believe it or not, EM isn't really much of an EM anymore. Over the years since that day, EM has actually decided to make an effort to try and improve herself. I guess she realized that if she didn't make changes, she would lose her relationship with Ellie. So EM started taking advantage of her medical coverage and went to see her psychiatrist and got medicine for mental illness she actually had, as opposed to the one she would make up. Since then, well, she has actually gotten way better. She takes her medicine regularly and has a boyfriend that is an extremely kind man and treats Ellie as though she were his own daughter. So basically, EM isn't really an EM anymore. We actually get along very well, and we see them frequently, and we help each other out whenever we can. We actually look back on the early years when she was in fact an EM and laugh. So not only is everybody getting along well, we can actually share the cringe stories and happily laugh about them. If you guys would like to hear some more, let me know. Let's hear from the comment section. Comment 1. It's very refreshing to read one of these that has a happy ending. It's also good to hear that you and Ellie are still together. I'm glad the EM got help and that she changed her ways too. Overall, super happy after this story. Thanks for sharing it, OP. Comment 2. Yay for you and Ellie. Yay formerly EM and her lovely boyfriend. I'm so glad this turned out well for everyone. I, for one, would love to hear more stories, especially with a happy ending. That's so rare here. Comment 3. This is the best ending anybody could wish for. I'm actually happiest for the EM. To get help and turn your life around is a great thing. People can cut a toxic person from their lives, but if they don't change, a toxic person is always stuck with themselves. Comment 4. What a nice happy ending. Even though you had to deal with an EM in the past, but this shows that not everything has to end up being a sad ending. Now, for our third story. Entitled Mother, EM, tried to get her daughter my job because I'm chubby. This happened today, so I thought I'd share. I'm F and home from college. The stay-at-home order in my town is slowly being lifted, so some businesses are finally opening up. My parents require me to have a summer job. I'm blessed enough that I get to keep all the money I earn. My parents just let me to work to gain experience. This will be relevant later, but I'm not a skinny girl. I wouldn't consider myself large either. I'm 5 feet 6 inches and weigh about 140 to 145 pounds right now and carry most of it in my hips and thighs. The freshman 15 did hit me hard though, as I used to be 120-ish. So today, after finishing my last online final, my dad called me. He told me that one of his friends who runs a company texted him that they were looking for girls to work in the office, answering phones and stuff. I got excited because that's exactly what I wanted, so I put on a dress, printed a copy of my resume, and drove down. The ladies inside were super nice and asked me to fill out an application, so I sat down to do so. And this is where the EM enters. Here's everyone involved. EM, entitled mom. EG, entitled girl. F, probably 16-ish. P me. DL1, desk lady 1, front desk. This woman is relatively thin, which will be relevant later. DL2, desk lady 2, desk further back, but still in room. This woman is plus sized, which will be relevant later. B, boss of the business. We're in the South, which might be relevant, because typically for jobs like this, they're looking for a pretty face to sit behind the counter and talk to customers. This is unspoken, though. Yes, it's awful, but hey, I needed a job. So, as I'm filling out an application, EM enters with EG. She announces that she's here about the opening and her daughter would like to apply. DL1 explains that she'll need to fill out an application and hands her one and a pen. They come sit in the lobby right beside me, which I thought was weird, but I didn't say anything. EM, to me, are you here for the job as well? P, yes, ma'am. EM, oomph. You know, that little cocky sound people make? I ignored her and went up to ask DL1 a question about the application. It was about how professional one of my references for babysitting was. When I returned and sat back down, EM walked up to the desk. Does my daughter even really need to fill this out? DL1. It's protocol, boss. We'll look at all the applications and decide who to call for an interview. EM. Is he here? I'm sure if he could see my daughter, he'd know who he wanted to call. Ha. DL1. He is, but he isn't seeing visitors right now. How will he know who to hire if he doesn't know what the girls look like? DL1. Well, he will need to see their references and will make a few calls before he dash. No. My daughter is an aspiring model. She won insert local pageant in 2019. He needs to see her to know she's the face he wants to see behind the counter interacting with customers. DL1. I'm not sure what you mean. This isn't a modeling job. Looks don't really matter. EM. Oh, I know, but they do. And let's face it, boss isn't going to want. At this point, she leans in closer to DL1. A chubby girl up here, is he? This whole time, EG is smirking at me and glances as she fills out her application. This caught the attention of DL2 as well as me, and we both looked up at this point. DL2. Ma'am, I'm not sure I know what you mean. EM. Oh, no disrespect, I just know boss personally and know he'd prefer a new pretty face around the office. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I think there's no question between my daughter and, well, this young lady, for example, me. No offense, honey. Just trying to save you some time. At this point, I'm in tears. I don't know if it was rage or the sting of her insult, but either way, I was not going to let her see me cry. So I quickly got up and handed my application to DL1 before trying to leave. DL2, a plus-sized woman sweetie weight. Talking to me, DL2, you say you know boss personally, right? Doing. EM, oh yes, we went to high school together. DL2, and you know him so well that you know he'd prefer a skinny woman behind this desk? Well, I didn't say that she did, but I'd assume so. DL2, great. Well, I'm his wife, and I've worked behind this desk for almost 15 years now. And as you can see, I could probably drop a few, and I take personal offense to what you're saying about my husband and this young lady. So I'd like you to wait in the car while your daughter fills out her application. EM and EG both stormed out at that point. E.g. took her application, so I don't know if she'll apply or not. But both women behind the counter told me that EM was a bitch and they'd vouch for me with the boss. So I'm hopeful had I got the job. Let's hear from the comment section. Comment 1. People suck sometimes. Hold your head high and be proud of who you are. Drive and determination will serve you well. In 4th grade, some kid called me fat Mexican man. He then told his neighbor who also went to school with us, and a lot of people started calling me that. And I'm self-conscious about my weight, so I started crying every time they call me that. He also then started rumors, so I ended up having a lunch table to myself, except one girl who sat next to me. One day my mom caught me crying to myself. I told her about the lunch table and the names and the rumors she told a counselor at the school. I think he got in trouble because he was nice to me after that. He has a cousin that went to school with us. She said he's really annoying too. And another kid who also did that stuff told me in middle school that he did it because the bad one said he would say he ate cats. He's Asian, so he played along. He then said he's sorry for it, and when I went into detail why he got in trouble, I couldn't finish it because I would start to cry because that shit scared me since I was so little. It was 4th grade, so I was 8 or 9. Comment 2. What a lovely example that woman is setting for her daughter. That kind of attitude is rarely tolerated in workplaces. If it is tolerated, usually that person won't have any friends amongst coworkers. It's honestly quite sad that she's setting her daughter up this way. I would be willing to bet that this is going to cause a lot of problems for the daughter in the long run in both her professional and personal life. Shame on that woman. Comment 3. I had a covert, but 66 kilograms is much? Girl, I have good news for you. Your weight is medically perfect, so if you feel good and don't have trouble doing basic sports, basketball, running, etc., you are in great shape. Comment 4. Southern entitled people are just as bad, if not worse, than entitled city people. I feel your pain, rural guy here. Wouldn't doubt DL2 will talk to her husband about it, and they'll throw out her application if she still fills it out. Because Southerners that aren't entitled stick together. Good luck. Now, for our 4th story. Entitled mom tries to deny her dying son his wish and tries to kill him because the books I got for him are satanic. Some backstory. I'm in a D&D group with a couple of friends from nearby, and one of the members of the group was a kid who was about 15 years old. He's a really sweet kid, likes helping other people out, and he's a big fan of Dungeons & Dragons. He also has cancer in both of his lungs. He's from a religious family that basically forces him to act pure while he's in their sight. The mom is WBC level rabid, while the dad is just a sensible person who just tries to get him to be a good kid. When he's out of sight of his parents, he just does normal teen stuff. Because of his mom, the only books he was allowed to own were Christian books and Bibles. He joined our group mainly as a way to escape his home life and his mom. A couple of weeks ago, the cancer in his lungs started to get to him, so he was taken to a hospital by his parents. He contacted me about this a day after he was taken to the hospital, stating that he wanted a monster manual as his last wish, stating that he was tired of reading the same things. I bought him the book from Barnes & Noble, but considering that he's a dying teen, I got him Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes stacked on top of that. The next day, which was his birthday, he was still in a hospital, so I brought him the books as a gift. After he blew out the candles, we had cake, and he started opening gifts. Mine was the first to be opened. Seeing what they were, he immediately got this humongous grin on his face and hugged me. Meanwhile, his mom stared down at the books with a look of pure disgust, with her husband staring at her with this wary look in his eyes. She picks up one of the books and relights one of the candles and holds the damn book over it to try and set it on fire. I managed to stop her and demand, "What the FUCK are you doing?" He asked me to get those books, and I'm not going to let you take them away. His mom simply stared me down and said something along the lines of the books being sinful, satanic, and full of evil, and that her son had no business with them. I retort and say that her son can read what he wants, and that she shouldn't have to force him to be Christian. She starts getting red in the face and yelling at me about essentially forcing children to believe in God from a young age. I state that I'm a Baptist, which I actually am, and say that faith in God is a matter between God and the individual. She turns red all over and actively starts to try and destroy the books, with me, my friend, and her husband trying to stop her. At one point, I shouted, "Would God want you to do this? To restrict your dying son's freedom of expression," right in her face. This just sets her fucking ablaze. She tosses the books aside and starts trying to strangle her son. And her husband calls security immediately when she does this. Security get here within about a minute of the two of us trying to pry EM off of her son and drag her away, with her shouting that we're all catamites to the devil. Both her husband and my friend charge her with child abuse, assault, and attempted murder. Trial's still going, and I'll try to update this post as the trial goes on. Trial was almost a disaster. Me, him, and her husband all prosecuted against her. The moment she saw us, she tried to tackle us, shouting something about divine retribution, but the officers restrained her. During the whole thing, she kept pinning the blame on me and him, calling us corrupted by sin. Needless to say, she was pronounced guilty of all 3 charges that I mentioned earlier. The moment she heard this, she went apeshit and tried to attack the judge, but officers tossed her to the floor. Now she'll be serving for 20 years for the other 3 charges, with 10 more on top of assaulting a court official. Thank you all for the support you guys gave us. To all who are wondering, my friend's fine. The cancer is gone from his lungs. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more.